So, in alphabetical order, Ali and AJ, I believe this is a Disney Channel thing or something. That's where they started from as child actors. And Ali, well, Chaka or something her name is, she's went on to be quite famous in certain circles as a adult actress. You know, adult as in just a grown up actress. She was on the program iZombie in a supporting role in every single episode, and that ran for like 4 or 5 seasons. Anyway, this was I assume they were maybe about 16 or 17 when we recorded the album Insomniatic, which is a made up silly word. I mean, everything about it sounds like it's going to be terrible. I stumbled across the album by accident. It was in a second-hand record shop on CD. I picked it up. The album cover artwork was hardly very exciting. The name Ali and AJ was not exciting. The title, Insomniatic, was a bit of a red flag. There's nothing about it that should have been of any interest, but I thought, it's like two for £5. I don't know, I'll take a chance on it. And, I thought it was really good. I didn't know anything about their past. It took me a while before I learned there was there were child actors in the Disney world or whatever. It's a perfectly good, solid pop album. I've listened to it a bunch of times. I like it. I think without that, I didn't listen to it in the context of them being, child actors. And so I took it on its own face value as music on its own merit, without all the prejudices against child actors. And for me, it was perfectly fine. And to this day, I still like the album. I think it's actually really enjoyable. And very recently, I was going through some old magazines and I came across a review of it. And they gave it 1 out of 5, and they just absolutely slammed it. Said it was soulless corporate pap. Which, you know what, it probably is, but without that context, is when I first heard it, all I heard was a well produced, well written pop album, and it was effective. It did its job, it worked on me. I've listened to it a multitude of times over many years, and I enjoy it. I might be the only man over the age of 20 who can say that, but whatever, I enjoyed it. Karen Ann, her album 101 is quite good. I don't love it. Her music's a bit too sedate, a bit too slow paced. Certainly listening to her as an album, her stuff, a little goes a long way, and you kind of want something a bit more up tempo, something that has a bit more of a kick to it. At least that's my experience. But on shuffle, her music is very appealing. She's a bit like Au revoir Simone, in which listen to it too much of this in one go and it's quite a dull, rather boring experience. But put this stuff on shuffle, and amongst other things that bring the energy and the flash and the excitement, and you get her sort of dim tempo, moody, atmospheric mood pieces, and they work really, really, really well in that context. So I really like her music if it's on shuffle. Her best album, at least as a listening experience as an album, is 101, and she has her best song on that album, which is My Name is Trouble. I would really strongly recommend you look up the music video for that. It's a great song with a great music video of her dancing with a bunch of men, and it's just very effective. So Karen Ann is worth investigating. Some of her songs and even whole albums are in French. Au revoir Simone. These are a group of women who make very soft, gauzy, ethereal, ambient music. The three of them sing and all three play synthesizers. There's a slight darkness to their music. You can hint, there are hints of something dark in the corner of the music. So it's no great surprise that David Lynch is apparently a big fan. They turned up in the Bang Bang Club in Twin Peaks The Return 2017. They are really, really, really good, very pretty sounding, gauzy songs with really nice, three women singing their pretty auto tunes. It's quite insubstantial. As I say, it's ethereal. It's not a lot of super strong melodies. It's all just a bit vague. As an actual album, to sit down and listen to one of these albums from start to finish is pretty hard going, unless you really are treating it as wallpaper, as ambient music. But if you are going to actually pay attention to it, it's not very enticing. It doesn't hold the attention very well. So the way I find their music to really, really work is on shuffle with other music. So you get the big bright pop banger, then you get their gauzy, ethereal, strange little piece of ambient wispiness, and then you get heavy metal. So, it's Kylie Minogue, Au Revoir Simone, Tool, and it works really well. It's like a palate cleanser between other, perhaps more substantial tracks. It does really, really work in that context. On a song by song basis, they are really good. It's just put too many of these songs in a row and the appeal definitely starts to pale. I believe the band was named after a line of dialogue in Pee-wee's Big Adventure 1985. Really good band. I do like them a lot. It's just a little goes a long way, though. I wouldn't want to actually sit down and listen to an album from start to finish and really pay attention because it's a bit samey. They have a particularly brilliant track called Dark Halls, which I think was the #1 most played song on my iPod. On my iTunes library, I'm pretty certain that was actually #1. I just played it constantly because Dark Halls is just such a beautiful, brilliant song. Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. I was in a music shop and they were playing some jazz music and I listened to it for a few minutes and then thought to myself, actually that's pretty good. I like that, but I have no idea who it is and I will never know who it is unless I ask. So I went up to the counter and asked, who is this? And I was told it was Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. Their album was called Free for All and the track itself was the title track Free for All. The reason I liked it was because it had momentum, it was quite heavy, percussion heavy. I mean, it's a long way from hard rock, but it was, as far as jazz was concerned, it was getting close to it. It was thunderous, it was eventful, things were happening, it was interesting. So I quickly got my hands on the album, and the rest of the album was as good as that song I heard. So if you like instrumental music and have no interest in jazz, you may actually get something out of this, so I would recommend it. Mel Brown. I think there was a jazz label in the 70s and a German company has recently, when I say recently I mean possibly 10 years ago, reissued a bunch of those albums to a CD. So I bought a few of those, one of which was Howard Roberts. It was not very good, but certainly very interesting if you want to hear something odd, not necessarily good or odd in a good way, but just odd, then Howard Roberts is definitely worth a look. But anyway, I wouldn't recommend Howard Roberts, but I would recommend Mel Brown. His two albums are blues rock with a jazz structure to them. He appears to play blues guitar with a jazz band, essentially, and there's only one conventional vocal song on the two albums, and that's a cover of Twist and Shout. And it's a good cover. It's just a good piece of guitar music. It's nothing remarkable. I wouldn't recommend it with any great enthusiasm, but it is a solid album, or solid albums. And I would at least say, if you like instrumental music and you don't mind a wee bit of jazz and a wee bit of blues, you could do a hell of a lot worse. Gabriella Cilmi, she's just a straightforward major label pop star who had a big hit with her first album, and then her second album just bombed, and she was very young. I think she was like maybe 16 or something when she did her first album, and maybe 18 when she did her second, and the second album was just a complete disaster, I think, commercially, and I don't think you're going to find too many people who say nice things about it. Now, I think the first album's good, with some very strong singles, but I really, really, really like the second album. I think it, as an actual album, is very strong, consistently good. On a Mission in particular is just one of the great pop songs. I love the, I guess it'd be synthesizer drum sound or something at the start. I just think it's a really, really, really excellent song, and the album itself is consistently very good. So I would recommend 10 by Gabriella Cilmi, and you're probably not going to find many other people who would recommend that album. She was dropped by her record label, and she did record a third album called The Sting, and it was just of no interest, just an attempt at being more mature, I think, and it just didn't work. Who wanted mature from her? It just wasn't of any interest. I remember the music video was black and white, and I think she was making references to like the 60s Italian neo-realism movies, and it's like, who cares? And that was the last album she released. Ren Harvey Yu, I believe that is how you pronounce her name. She released one album, I think it sold quite well, and then she just disappeared, and then it took like 6 or 7 years before she released another album, and I think by that time her commercial potential heyday had gone, and the second album was, I wouldn't say self-released, but anyway, it wasn't on a major label, and as far as I'm aware, didn't really receive much attention. The first album's really good, very strong, kind of big orchestra, torch song type stuff. Really good. Not outstanding, not amazing, but really good, and very much worth seeking out. And the second album, what I've heard of it so far, I like. It's not as good as the first album, but there's certainly no major drop off in quality that's worth investigating. Heinz. They are a very one-of-a-kind, peculiar band. I think they are Spanish, and there are 2 female singers. Their voices just sound unlike any other voices I have heard, probably because they are Spanish. Maybe if I listened to a bunch of Spanish music, I wouldn't say that. But these Spanish women singing English lyrics, I guess their phrasing is just slightly off. It's just unlike any other vocals I have heard. The guitars sound different to other guitars. The tone of the guitars are just unusual. They do not sound like any other guitars. So they are a very unique sounding band. They come up on shuffle amongst all my other music, and every time it always stands out. It just sounds like no one else. They are really quite intriguing. Susanna Hoffs, she was in the Bangles, and I don't really have any particular opinion on the Bangles. And I do not know the rest of her solo career, but she has one album called Someday. It's 10 songs, and it's just really, really, really good. And I don't know if it's very representative of anything else she did. If she did do anything of similar sound and quality, then I do not know it. And I have had a quick look through her catalogue, and it's just not of any real interest what I have heard. But that one album, Someday, just really, it's 10 perfect little pop songs, modest little songs, some modest production, just a very nice, tight, modest pop album, and it's certainly been something that I have returned to many, many times and really, really enjoy. It is very much well worth tracking down. Lady Hawk. Her debut album was actually quite a big hit. At first I didn't think it was that successful, but over a period of about 6 months it became popular and was successful. But I feel as though she has disappeared, she just faded away, and the album has become more or less forgotten. If you lived through that period of time, I'm sure she remains a name that you very much know, but otherwise I just feel as though her legacy, that album just went up in smoke, just evaporated. The reason for that would be because her second album, which she released quite quickly after the first, was very, very underwhelming. At the time it felt really weak. Over the years I've listened to it a bunch. It's okay, there's certainly some decent songs there, but it's a big drop in quality from the excellence of the first album. And I think she's released 2 more albums over a long period of time since, and I think her commercial heyday has just totally gone. She's releasing to a small audience who I assume appreciate what she's doing. It left no particular impression on me. Those 2 albums just made me shrug. They were fine, but just unremarkable. But that first album is really worth a damn. It's a lot of strong melodies, very 80s sounding in a good way, and it's just a powerful album.